Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about all the games that happened this past weekend, gotten into Navy just dismantling Army in a lot of different ways, got into the FCS quarterfinals, a lot of different things happening around this time of year. But let's get into the transfer portal because this is another thing that is happening right about now, and there have been a lot of commitments that have happened over the last little bit. So let's go ahead and jump into this thing, and we'll start over there in College Station. Julian Humphrey has officially committed to Texas A&M, a big-time pickup for this back end where you have Will Lee coming back next year if Bryce Anderson returns as well. This could be a really, really good back end. Julian Humphrey had some tough moments throughout the year, did get benched later on in the year for Daniel Harris, but a very talented player, no doubt about that, and definitely a guy that can make a big-time difference in this back end going into 2025. Dylan Teneman is a very talented safety that is one of the more complete players in this entire portal cycle. He is on his way to Oregon, a big-time pickup for the Ducks, and they didn't stop there. They also got Theron Johnson, a top 3 corner that is coming out of Northwestern. Very, very talented player, so that back-end rebuilding is officially starting to happen. You're going to have a lot of those guys that you brought in last cycle that are going to be walking out the door this time around, and you're going to have to replace them. They got 2 really, really talented players. Love this player here that absolutely is one of the more complete safeties that you will find in the entire country. Then we got the quarterbacks. Miller Moss has officially made his decision. He will be a Louisville Cardinal, and this is a big-time pickup for Jeff Brom because Louisville has been just a transfer quarterback realm since Jeff Brom took over. The first year it was Jack Plummer, and it really worked. They got to the ACC Championship, did some really remarkable things. Then it was Tyler Shuck, and it sort of worked. It was a little bit more up and down. They missed some marks here and there, but I think Miller Moss is better than both of those guys. I think he has all the ability in the world, and I think this offense makes a ton of sense for a guy with his skill set. I think he might just explode next year, and Louisville might just be a team right back there in Charlotte at the end of the year. As well as that, Jackson Arnold made the decision he is going to end up at Auburn, and it's not the one that I expected. I thought he was going to end up in Starkville for Mississippi State, but at the end of the day, he is going to be a Tiger, and this is a huge pickup. No doubt about that. It's not necessarily the perfect fit for that offense necessarily, given his skill set, but at the end of the day, if he can avoid picks like he had an issue with this year, if he can avoid some turnovers, they can be really dangerous downfield. With those wide receivers, with his arm strength, they absolutely have the ability to be a very explosive team. Can they avoid those turnovers is still going to be a question as you head into this year, but a very talented guy nonetheless, and definitely will give that explosivity to that offense. Michael Van Buren was one of the ones that went a little bit under the radar. He is committed to LSU, and this is another tough hit for Mississippi State in this transfer portal class that just keeps coming for Mississippi State, frankly. But a huge get for LSU. This will be Garrett Nussmeier's successor once he does leave, and I think this kid is incredible. I think the ceiling is remarkably high. Now he has a little bit of time to develop, get a little bit better of a passer. He's a remarkable player. I think he could do incredible things at LSU, and now he's got a little bit of time to figure out the offense, understand what's in front of him, and then I think just let it rip in 2026. But they got some much-needed depth at that position, and Michael Van Buren is a huge pickup for LSU. Kevin Coleman, another hit to Mississippi State, was Kevin Coleman leaving, and he ended up where we expected him to end up at Missouri. A huge pickup for the Missouri Tigers. They obviously are losing Luther Burden, losing Theo Weiss to the NFL this year, so need some replacements. They got a big-time one here. This is a very talented player, one of the more underrated guys in the entire SEC. Definitely a guy that can make a difference in that offense pretty much immediately, and it doesn't sound like Missouri's over getting a couple of wide receivers, and we'll talk about that obviously in the coming days. Tanner Koziel, one of the top tight ends that's in the portal right now, or no longer in the portal. He is committed to Wisconsin, a really talented pass catcher, and definitely can give that Wisconsin pass game just kind of a good baseline. Give you that kind of security blanket that gives you those 5-10 yards when you absolutely need them. I think this kid's going to be a household name next year. He is a remarkable player, and just the fact that he was Ball State was the only reason that people didn't know his name this year. He's a remarkable player and cannot wait to see what he can do at Wisconsin. And then we got to talk about some teams because Ole Miss has started their move and they will probably end with another top 5 transfer portal class if I had to imagine. But they got Prince William Mielen, a huge pickup. The brother of Princely definitely was one of those that they felt pretty confident about when he jumped in. They officially locked him up this past weekend. And then a trio of Razorbacks. You got Jalen Braxton, a talented corner. You got Luke Hawes, a very good tight end that I like a lot. And then Patrick Kudos, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the portal right now. They are all committed committed to Ole Miss, and I have to imagine some more are coming. But Luke Hawes is a huge pickup here, definitely can fill the void that Caden Priestcorn will leave this year, and definitely a big-time pickup for Ole Miss, and it's not stopping anytime soon, if you had to imagine. LSU, a big-time week for LSU, where I called them losers at the end of last week. They definitely heard me because they got some big-time players. On top of Van Buren, which we already talked about, they got Bauer Sharp, an Oklahoma tight end. They got Barry and Brown, which is a huge pickup and definitely could be a game-changer for that offense, especially with Garrett Nussmeier's ability to push the ball downfield. Jakeem Jackson, a Florida cornerback. Jamari Butler, a Nebraska edge. All positions that they very much needed to be filled. They got some really talented guys to fill them. Texas did a nice job in the portal this past weekend, and they're trying to continue that into this week. They pick up Brad Spence, a very talented linebacker from Arkansas, Jack Boomeister, a very talented punter that was all Big 12 a year ago at Utah, and then you got Cole Brevard, a Purdue defensive tackle, very physical guy, definitely a position that they very much needed to fill. They got a big-time player there, and they host Eric Singleton this week, the top player in the entire portal, the top wide receiver. If they can get a commitment from him, then this portal class looks really good for Texas as you head into 2025. And then Texas Tech, and this was a huge one. They picked up 6 commitments thus far throughout the portal cycle, highlighted by Reggie Virgil, the very talented wide receiver from Miami of Ohio. Bryce Pollock, also coming over from Mississippi State, is huge at the cornerback position. A really elite group being put together by Joey McGuire and company, and definitely builds up for this guy right here, who made his commitment yesterday, the very talented wide receiver, Micah Hudson. He is on his way to College Station. He is going to be an Aggie next year, a big-time pickup for Mike Elko and that staff. They need difference makers on the outside. If they can combine him with Jerome Miles, could be a very, very potent offense. If they can get that pass game going, which has been a little bit of a struggle around there for the last little bit, but definitely some very talented pass catchers to go after right now. And then we'll get to the intel, and Bo Pribla definitely starts this one off. He is transferring out of the Penn State program. He is leaving before the CFP. This is not his fault, plain and simple. I understand there will be some people that will throw blame at him. They will draw comparisons between him and Devin Brown and a couple other guys that are doing the same thing but staying with their team through the portal. I promise you there's not the same offers on the table for those guys that there is for this guy. He is a very, very talented player, and the terrible calendar just continues to hurt these kids and put them in terrible positions. He said as much. It was an impossible position for him to be put in, and he made the decision that he felt was best. It's an absolute nightmare position to be put in, and I think he handled it okay. It's one of those things that we'll probably get into more detail about how they just have to fix December in general in the college football world, but another quarterback that has to leave his team just a little bit earlier than he probably wanted to, because that's the world that we live in right about now. But moving forward, Mario Craver is another Mississippi State wide receiver that found his way out of that program, and he's making travels around all the SEC, LSU, Alabama, a lot of different teams that are very much involved for this kid, but it sounds like a commitment could be coming soon. Visits are still kind of happening around him, so we'll see what happens there, but definitely a guy that a lot of guys want to get their hands on. Feels like Alabama and LSU are leading the way right about now, but a lot of teams that are still very much involved for this kid. Eric Singleton, we talked about it. He will be in Austin today and tomorrow, and then I believe he is off to Coral Gables. That's the other top 5 team that he has not visited yet. Once he's visited them, all the visits are done. The top 5 is officially taken care of, and then it's just decision time. We'll see what happens there. We'll see if he makes it to Coral Gables. Texas has been really, really good about getting a guy on campus and getting a commitment before they leave. If they can get one here, that would be absolutely huge for the Longhorns. Then Eric Rivers, really remarkable player, top 5 receiving yard wide receiver in 2023. He's making his rounds, and he'll actually be in Atlanta this next weekend for Georgia Tech, and would be a huge, huge commitment for them to replace that Eric Singleton void that will be absolutely massive next year. But this would be a very talented guy to bring in and make a little bit of a difference in this offense. Then you have a guy like Dane Key, and Ole Miss is the new name to watch here, as you can imagine. Ole Miss is going to be around this thing a lot, but UGA and Nebraska seem to be the teams that are still sort of in this thing, but he's coming off a visit from Oxford this weekend, and I have to imagine that Ole Miss is the leader in the clubhouse right about now. They're going to be really, really tough to beat out the rest of the way. Deuce Robinson, the USC transfer, is on the road, and he has made his way to Tempe, Arizona. He is at Arizona State and was there this past weekend. Sounds like they are the pretty comfortable favorites right about now. In fact, a commitment could be coming here pretty soon with this one. But they also, Arizona State also pick up Noble Johnson, a very talented Clemson wide receiver transfer. So they're picking up the slack in the transfer portal right about now. But this would be an absolute get. This would make that wide receiver core just ridiculous going into 2025 with him and Jordan Tyson. Kanye Udo, the Army running back, has entered his name into the portal. Yes, you can transfer out of service academies. I know that sounds crazy. You absolutely can. There is an ability to do that. But Kanye Udo was a very highly touted guy coming out of high school. I assume he will be a highly touted guy in the portal. He is someone that if you need a little bit of running back depth, if you need a little bit of running back help, he could be a huge, huge piece to that. I don't think there's a team that won't look at this kid, if I'm being totally honest. Very, very talented guy, and you go all the way up to Texas. That might need a little bit of running back help. I could definitely see them giving a call to this kid. Another running back that has been on the market for a little bit and already has a ton of names around him is Justice Haynes, a very talented running back from Alabama, one of my favorite running backs really in the entire country. I think the ceiling of this kid is absolutely ridiculous. It sounds like Ohio State and Michigan are two teams battling it out. He also set visits for Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Florida, so those are kind of the 5 teams to keep an eye out on. I would definitely keep an eye out on Michigan in this one. Feels like they definitely need that running back position to be filled a little bit. They add him to Bryce Underwood. That could be a very, very fun backfield for the Michigan Wolverines in 2025. Max Clare is a guy you're going to want to watch, the top tight end in the portal right about now. He's starting to make his rounds. He was at Texas A&M this past weekend. Sounds like Louisville might be the team to watch for this one. They've gotten a couple of crystal balls from guys around that program. That would be a huge pickup for Miller Moss early on in this time around Louisville. If they could pick up this kid, that would be absolutely huge and definitely would help out their passing game heading into 2025. And then Georgia. An interesting thing that has been happening around the portal right about now is Georgia's very interested in a lot of different quarterbacks out there. They're hosting Dylan Lonergan, the Bama transfer and actually in-state product from Brookwood High School, this upcoming weekend. And then the rumor to be in for Fernando Mendoza, the Cal transfer that has been very highly touted by a number of NFL scouts. It seems like they're in for that guy as well. So a little bit of added pressure for Gunnar Stockton as he heads into this thing that your job next year is not locked down by any means. So a lot of different things on his mind as he heads into this thing, and it could just be another quarterback breathing down his shoulder. So a lot of different things heading into this one, and definitely something that we'll monitor is that quarterback situation over there in Athens, Georgia. But just to give you an idea of the guys that are still on the board, we talked about Eric Singleton, we talked about Deuce Robinson. Luke Kromenhoek just became a lot more important to Jeff Lebby and the guys over there in Starkville because they very badly need a quarterback. This might be the guy that they have the inside track on right about now. Dane Key, Nick Anderson are still out there. Nick Anderson could be an A&M guy. Definitely something to watch there. Some different things pointing in that direction. Fernando Mendoza still kind of making his round. Takario Davis has been really quiet since he's entered. I feel like Texas has the lead there with the defensive coordinator making his way over there in Johnny Nansen, but we'll see what happens there. Jaheim Otis feels like it's all Colorado at this point. Casey Concepcion starting to make his rounds. Feels like Alabama and Colorado are the two to really watch there. Definitely some teams that are still very much in it, but those two have really stood out to me. And then Micah Hudson, I had him on here. He's no longer available. He is committed to A&M, so a lot of different guys coming off the board, and that will continue into this week and likely will start to temper down until we get to the end of bowl games. And a lot of different guys pop in for the couple of days that are open after that, but definitely a lot of questions around the transfer portal still to be had. A lot of commitments. A lot of commitments coming in, but this is just the start. No doubt about that, and we'll break it down as it continues to develop. But let's take our last break here, and when we come back, we got a little bit of a headline roundup from this past weekend. We got some Bill Belichick updates. It's been a very, very nice couple of days around Chapel Hill. We'll talk about Marshall opting out of their bowl game. We'll talk about the coolest trophy that I've ever seen in my entire life, and all of that stuff right after this, so stick with us.